I, 18-year-old female, met my ex, male 22 years old, in February of 2020, but didn't end up dating him till closer to my 17th birthday. Because he still lived with his girlfriend, he told me they were just friends and he didn't like her like that. And I didn't find out till later that they were actually still doing things together, and meeting him was the biggest mistake of my life. Everything started off great as every relationship goes. I sent pics cause he was my boyfriend, and of course, I let him save them for later use. Another big mistake. I noticed that they were still texting, and when went through his phone, he was saying he still loved her and missed her. I was deeply hurt and called him out on it. He apologized and said it would never happen again, and I told him to text her that we were dating, and he did. She was pissed. She stopped paying for the house and helping him with car payments, and at this time, he had quit Taco Bell and refused to do his new job Ubering because I needed to practice League of Legends because I want to be a pro league streamer. So I worked my ass off and ended up losing my job because the manager didn't let me work without a doctor's note, so I was stuck working this job while he was playing games. Before I met him, I had 4.5k in my savings. He ended up using my card to pay his phone bills, car payment, the apartment, daily weed, and gosh darn CSGO nights. He kept losing his accounts due to telling people to off themselves and using the F and N slur. But the worst was yet to happen. I found out that he was using an old tablet to exclusively watch adult content, set up dating accounts, and have different Instagram accounts. But on these accounts, he was pretending to be women. I called him out on this and told him I wanted to leave. He freaks out, jumping around and screaming and crying, saying he would change, and I trusted him. As time went on, things got worse, and I was scared to leave, and by the end of this you will see why. He had shoved me into a wall and getting into my face, screaming, "You stole my car keys because you don't want me to work," which was stupid because he had thrown his car keys at me during a different argument. But one day, I went through the iPad and found that he was actively not just sending, but selling my pictures from when I was 16 and 17, and doing the same with his other ex. I started to try to get my stuff together and put Gorilla Glue in the charging port to just get rid of the filth I just saw. When he found out that it no longer charged, he used my card to get us food. He was livid. He started screaming and getting in my face. I tried to go around him and grab my things, but when my back was turned, he pulled me down to the ground till he was able to put me in a chokehold. I was sobbing and just accepted that this would be the end, but before I blacked out, he let me go and I started gasping for air and gagging from excessive coughing as he just stood and laughed at me. I tried to crawl away from him, but he grabbed my leg and started dragging me out of the apartment. I kicked to try to get him off, which just made him pull me like a dog, playing tug of war. He eventually dragged me out, keeping my walls, keys, and all of my valuables. So I sat crying, begging for my stuff so I could just go home. He came outside and pulled me down the apartment stairs by my leg, and I was left with extreme bruising and some cuts. I did end up calling the police, and they did absolutely nothing. Fast forward, he had moved because he had nowhere to stay or live after getting evicted from the apartment, and I had gotten a new job. One day, it was practically cold, and I went to get a shirt out of my car, and there it was. BM was sitting in my car, on his phone. I left the door unlocked, usually because I worked in a good area. I called him a cheater and told him to leave. He got out of the car and was starting to go around the back, so I jumped in and tried to lock the door from the back seat. He ran over and pulled the door open, and I started trying to pull me out of the car. I started screaming and kicking at him. Thankfully, a customer saw this happening and called the police. They arrested him, and told me to go home for the night, which they ended up firing me for. Unfortunately, he got bailed out, and while he was in jail, he had given out my phone number to other people there. He walked 4.5 hours to my house after he was released and was looking around my backyard when my neighbor saw him and called my dad. My dad got in his truck with his gun and waited for him to come out of the gas station. He eventually did, but ran off. He wasn't shot. He had harassed me, saying that he was going to show up at my graduation and ruin everything, and has gotten to the point making multiple fake accounts on Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok, pretending to be me and his other ex. And as of today, he still pretends to be high school girls, selling our pictures and making fake accounts. So, I'm a 28-year-old woman, and this happened to me when I was 13. I'm an adult now and still kind of traumatized. For a little context, at 13 I transferred to schools because of lack of money. This school I went to was a cheaper private school, because where I lived, the public ones kinda sucked. I didn't have any friends for at least the first couple of months. I started noticing this boy, Victor. He was always staring at me during classes, in the hallway by the window, and at lunch. It was an everyday thing, but I didn't care because as a kid I only thought of stupid stuff, like dolls or whatever. Oh, and one more thing. I was flat as a table back then, so totally looked like a small child. The girls in my class started saying that Victor had a crush on me, which creeped the heck out of me, because he was 18. I was creeped out, but I still didn't care, as long as he didn't approach me or anything. But things escalated quickly. Victor would follow me home every day. Thank God, I moved since then, and he doesn't know where I live anymore. The most annoying thing, however, was that he constantly asked his friends to try to talk to me and try to convince me to go out with him and make out with him after school. These talks would usually take about 30 minutes of them trying so hard to convince me to agree with this, while Victor was behind them watching the conversation like a freak. Obviously, I rejected him all the time, but being the nice guy that he said he was, he spread rumors about us making out anyway. Nobody believed anyway, because he was such a weird guy, and the whole school knew it. The final straw was when our school had a trip to a book fair. I was super excited. At this point, I had made a couple of friends. On our way to this fair, I was on the bus with my friend and Victor was on 3 seats behind us, and I could feel his eyes on me the whole way. Out of nowhere, he came and asked for my friend's cell phone, and she gave it to him. So stupid of her. He returned her cell phone not even 2 minutes after. She had checked the cell phone and showed me that he had taken a bunch of photos of me. I guess this was his way of saying that he had already done this at some point. She got so pissed and went to go talk to him. When she returned, she said the creepiest thing I've heard in my life. She said this with a very scared face. He said to me that when you least expect it, he will push you into a bathroom and rape you. Today, the only thing that went through my mind was, what should I do now? I looked at him and he gave me a creepy smile. After this, I spent the whole day looking behind my back, not leaving the side of my teacher. She didn't even understand why I didn't want to walk around at the fair. I was in alert mode all the time, and thank God nothing happened. When I came home, I cried in my room like a baby. This was at the end of the year, and thankfully I switched to schools again. I told this to my mom last year, and she was like, yeah, it happens. It happened to me too when I was your age. So shocked about how this is such a common thing. I am 28, and I still see Victor on the streets. He had followed me around a few times. I always walk in circles until I lost him, but sometimes he waits for me outside the stores or restaurants. I think about what would have happened to me in the book fair if I didn't have my teacher next to me the whole time, and I wondered if one day he'll do something or just keep this creepy behavior. Alright, I spent my entire slow day at work yesterday reading through this sub, so now I want to share my little story. My childhood best friend, Mary, and I were around 11 or 12 years old at the time. Mary's family had their own campsite in a provincial park about 2 hours from our hometown, and would spend the entire summer each year living in their camper out there. This particular summer, I was able to go out and stay with them for a week, and we were excited to spend our time adventuring around the forest. On the last night that I was there, we decided we want to hurry down to the ice cream shop by the lake before it closed. It was early evening at this point. It's still pretty bright out, but beginning to lose light. The path we took was down a short slope right next to the main road, with maybe 10 feet of thick bush and trees in between. On the other side was the forest, with more tall, thick bushes. So we were walking along, not seeing a single other person on the path in front or behind us. We heard a sudden rustling and a snapping of branches, similar to the sound of maybe a deer moving through the woods. I didn't have thought anything of it, but then the sound of running footsteps follows. Mary glances back and suddenly grabs my arm, urging me under her breath not to look back. At the same time, the running stops. I don't know why I didn't ignore her and get a look myself. I guess I could sense a very real fear in her voice and choose to listen. We both start to panic, getting that feeling like when you're running up the stairs after turning the basement light off. We pick up speed as much as we can without breaking into a sprint, knowing the ice cream shop is only about a minute walk away at this point. The path soon breaks and we are in the parking lot. Suddenly, Mary steers me hard to left, heading towards the lake and the boat rental instead of continuing straight to the ice cream shop, and I go along with it silently, understanding ice cream is no longer an interest right now. Mary is clearly panicking at this point. We are both looking around, but it seems whatever scared her is nowhere in sight at this point. Mary walks up to the boat rental and gets us a kayak, and we climb in and begin to paddle out into the middle of the lake. As we paddle, she tells me that there was a man behind us, and that the man had stopped running at us very abruptly upon making eye contact with her. He had been wearing a long black coat, with the hood up despite it being middle of July, had a terrible smirk on his face, and she swore that he stopped running. She saw him put something shiny away in his coat. He appeared to have just emerged out of the bushes after we walked past, given the sound we heard right before he came running onto the path. We reached the center of the lake and I stopped paddling. I pulled out my Nokia brick phone that my parents had, thank God, given me just in case. I hand it to Mary and tell her to call her parents to come pick us up. As the phone rings, I see her look out past me to the shore and go pale, lifting a hand to point to what she's seeing. I turn, and there was the man, stalking his way around the path that circled the edge of the lake. He's staring out at us. We sat in the middle of the lake and watched him do 2 full laps, never looking away from us, before finally disappearing. It took a few tries to get a hold of our family. We were freaking out so bad the whole time. As the sun got lower and lower, we did manage to have someone come with the truck, but by the time we reached the shore, it was pretty dark outside. I don't know what we would have done if we hadn't been able to call for a ride. Looking back, I don't know why we didn't just go up to the ice cream shop, inform an adult there, and ask our parents to come get us then. But it worked out. We got back safe, and thankfully, we never saw the man again.